Last time out, what were we talking about? We were talking about all of the esports politics and fuckery, weren't we? And because obviously ESL just will not stop doing that. That's pretty much how they operate. It's how they operated before they had Saudi funding, and it's certainly they're a marriage made in heaven in that regard, because obviously the Saudis like to have monopolies, and ESL have always wanted a monopoly, and so they're engaged in a bunch of fuckery to try and monopolize the Counter-Strike scene, and Valve appear to be an absentee father or an absentee landlord on this particular issue, and they're just allowing them to really unfairly leverage their relationships to negatively impact on other tournament operators in the space. And the big one, of course, is PGL. Now, historically, obviously, I've criticized PGL in the past for things. I don't think they've been entirely perfect. Now that we have a working relationship, which you should be mindful of when I voice any criticism for any of their competitors, I do have a business relationship with this company. Now I get to back channel. And so, if I notice that they're doing something I don't like, I say to them, hey, have you thought about not doing that? But obviously I don't go public with it, because that's just kind of bad practice when you can literally just pick up the phone and call people. All of which is to say, though, I think in this particular instance, as it pertains to Counter-Strike, I think they've been given short shrift, and I think they've been very unfairly treated by entities that will no doubt want to have a relationship with them in the future, supposing that ESL doesn't get its short-term wish, and to drive PGL out of business, because they're pretty much the only major competitor left, particularly with the recent StarLadder acquisition and Nodwin and several ex-ESL executives now working over there, and Ralph Rijkaard on the board. Never been explained why that was hidden from the public, but apparently it's a conspiracy theory if you think there's anything weird about that. Blast and ESL have an alliance, essentially, and what I'm told, it's based on the understanding Blast are never going to fuck with ESL dates. Blast are never going to fuck with ESL on the calendar. Basically, ESL will get all the plum dates on the calendar, and they're not going to run over with Blast, but Blast are going to get the secondary choices. And it's basically, if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. And that's kind of how they're playing in the sandpit. But that's kind of interesting, because there's going to be events going head-to-head in 26, and certainly beyond in 27. We already talked about the Battle of Krakow and what a fucking mess that was. But in 26, the dates were already available. You will see PGL overlapping with Blast, and I do believe PGL overlapping with ESL, making it fundamentally impossible to do both. And we all know what's going to happen when it comes to the choices. That's what we're going to get into now. So, basically, the MGOs, that's multi-gaming organizations, if you're not familiar with the term, since there's a few people asked last time, basically an esports organization, but MGO makes it clear that they don't just have one team, they have multiple teams in multiple disciplines. It's a bit of a redundant term, but I like using it because it's an old school thing. Anyway, the MGOs, like, Team Liquid, Na'Vi, they've basically said, we want appearance fees, or we're not coming to your events. And so, obviously, ESL have essentially kept the Louvre agreement in place. They say it's not the Louvre agreement. They say it's something different. All the numbers and all of that basically match up to, it's just the Louvre agreement. Blast obviously have this hospitality and frequent flyer points, which is a little bit better in the sense it can be earned by anyone at all levels, provided that you qualify for Blast tournaments. But ultimately, it's still essentially the same model. And PGL were the last holdout. And what PGL wanted to do, PGL didn't want to have to pay appearance fees. Their rules were pretty clear. They said, if you sign up, we will give you the full amount of the prize pool as a prize, but what your agreement is with your players is entirely up to you, and we don't consider it appropriate for us to intervene with that by saying 50% or 70%, whatever it might be, goes off the top to you, and then the rest goes to the players. Now, I've explained multiple times, but it's always someone's first stream or first video, so I'll repeat it. The problem is this, right? These orgs are double dipping, right? What do I mean by that? Well, so they are asking for appearance fees that goes to them, their business, and then they take a cut of the prize money. Not all orgs take a cut, but increasingly, certainly from the COVID years and beyond, when it came to renegotiations in contracts, they started upping it, and it was 10%, 15%, and in some cases it's 25%, and in other cases it's if the prize is over $1 million, they get 50% and stuff like this. So the bigger the prize, you actually are incentivized to win because more goes to the org. There's all these types of clauses now. Sometimes these agents are also negotiating these things. That's a whole other kettle of fish, but ultimately that's what's going on. So when you pay these organizations an appearance fee, they also then take money that is to cover expenses from the prize pool. And that hasn't been addressed publicly. No one's called them out for that except me, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen a single organization explain they're no longer going to do that moving forward. They're going to immediately renegotiate and allow the players to keep their money. Basically, this is why we needed a player union / association, but now we don't have one. And players don't want to rock the boat because, first of all, they love their big fat salaries, and those currently are being untouched. And they do love just having, if they're one of the lucky few, to have a low level of prize money percentage being taken by the org, or they can keep it all. Then they're not going to rock the boat for that either. For me, I think when the money goes to the orgs out of a prize pool, the players are being robbed. They're being stolen from by the organizations. But the problem you then have is those players could just create their own org and keep all the prize money, but then they don't get a salary, and no one's getting out of bed if they don't get a salary. So that's basically the value the organizations contribute. Their business is essentially a foundation to provide a salary for professional players. That's pretty much it. Beyond that, they might provide one or two things, sometimes housing. That's becoming increasingly rare these days because team houses are fucking grotesque, an aberration, and should never have happened and were only there to cut corners and didn't really serve anyone's goals beyond the owners of the organizations. But obviously as well, sometimes you get access to, sports psychologists, you get access to nutritionists, trainers, coaches. You might get a better level of care and training than you would if you didn't, if you weren't part of an esports organization, MGO. That's it. That's pretty much the value they provide. But unfortunately, that value is so disproportionate. Players will even turn a blind eye to effectively being fucking robbed to have that, because when you're on 40,000 a month, the prize money is largely academic. So what should happen is the organizations should be saying to the players, we don't get appearance fees because appearance fees are an anathema in a competitive space. So we're going to take 25% of the prize money or 50% of the prize money, but you get to keep your salary. Or we're going to take 25% of the prize money and we got to shave $5,000 off your salaries. And by the way, players would probably still go for that, and then none of this fuckery has to happen. But these organizations prefer it this way because they're making way more money than probably ever before. And they're going to tell you they're not. But when you factor into the fact that they're getting paid by Blast, paid by ESL, massive fat stipends from Saudi Arabia in the form of the Esports World Club Cup program, orgs have never had it so good. And that money is not trickling down. Salaries have actually come down. And now they're taking a cut of prize money as well, which I think all of that is grotesque. I saw Chad actually go and watch, I think it's the last episode, the most recent episode of Talking Counter. Chad goes off on one, and Yanko and Moses are a bit more pragmatic. They're like, look, we don't think the organizations are bad guys. Sponge is like, look, they're taking all this money. It's coming from the players' pockets, essentially. They're getting VRS points for the tournament being awarded when, in fact, the prize money isn't prize money. It's an appearance fee. Me and Chad are totally aligned on this. The other guys, not so much, and that's fine. I guess everyone's got different perspectives. Anyway, we had Cluj-Napoca, and there was a bunch of notable teams that didn't go. And one of the things that upset me was the blatant lies that they were telling to sort of basically cover up what was going on behind the scenes, because they don't want you to know what's actually at play. And so I'll just play you this. And it's always sad when they make players go out and do this stuff.
Did you take off time between Katowice and this event, or have you guys been practicing from home? What's the situation been?
We decided to skip that one because we had to take some visas, not EU visas, US visas. So
okay.
Yeah, we had to do it, Oh,
it's fair. Look, don't worry.
Now, as I said last time out, and it bears repeating, you didn't do it because of that. you did it because your organization was trying to leverage PGL into paying them money. There is nothing, right? I don't know how many times I've explained this. I don't know if people are still living in the 80s, which is kind of crazy, right? Like, because you shouldn't be. That's my job. I live in the 80s, right? You don't. I'm the boomer. You're not, right? The reality is Romania is in the Schengen agreement. It's no different than traveling to any other European country in the Schengen agreement. Traveling to a Schengen country will not flag anything on a US visa application. And also, the players aren't filling in these forms themselves. I'll just explain it very explicitly because I'm getting sick of this lie being put out there. And it's bad when organizations get players to lie about it too. You know, Fury have told the same lie and now G2. Let's be clear, right? When you apply for a visa, and I've had 3 of these visas that you would need to apply for, so I do know what I'm talking about. Lived in America for close to 6 years, worked for 2 companies when I was in America, and for every time I had one of these visas that players are applying for, basically it's a subset of the exceptional persons visas. It's O1 for like entertainment and P1 for athletics. And what you do is, you, particularly if it's a renewal, which it will be for all of these players, because they've been to America many times themselves and competed abroad many times, all it is a form goes to the fucking Department of Immigration. A lawyer has a bunch of testimonials and signatures that explains who you are, what you do, what the purpose of travel is, and why it's essential that you have an athletic visa because you're one of the best players in the world. They'll be using a law firm that specializes in this, so it'll be boilerplate language, bar 1 or 2 little bits. It goes off. The Department of Immigration 99% of the time it's just going to stamp it, particularly if it's a renewal, or you might get what they call RFE'd. RFE'd is a referral for further evidence. It means they're not convinced by the case, or they need a little bit longer to review it and review some of the things you've used to make your case, and then it'll get stamped or it'll get rejected. The problem with US rejections for visas of that type is it essentially precludes you from entering the country for X amount of months afterwards. I think it's 6. It used to be, I'm pretty sure. That was the big fear every time I was applying for a renewal of my visa, because if you're in the country and you're renewing your visa, you can stay there while you're between renewals, but if you get a renewal rejected, you have to leave the country within 60 days. And so that's how it works if you don't have a visa while you're living abroad. Anyway, all of which is to say that traveling to Romania will not in any way impact on the US visas. It is a lie. It is a blatant lie. It is an easily debunkable lie. And if it isn't, I again would welcome these organizations with a signature from the law firm they use to write a letter explaining why travel to Romania, a Schengen agreement European country, why it would impact on an application for a US visa, because I've never heard it, and as someone that travels a lot and likes to go to the US, I'd like to know. That would actually be valuable. Anyway, they won't do that because it's bullshit. So, the strong-arming, unfortunately, worked. And despite all of the chitter-chatter about how it was, it was never about the money, it was never this, obviously PGL have had to acquiesce, and now they've fallen in line and given them 50% of all of the total prize pool will be going to the organizations. This is a little bit different because in ESL, it's like sometimes it's something like 70% of the players and 30% to the orgs. And then for the smaller events where they're advertising a totally bogus fake prize pool where they're saying it's $1 million, but it isn't because 70% goes to the org and 30% goes to the players. This is a 50-50 split for the entire of the PGL circuit, starting from their next Counter-Strike event, which will be Bucharest. And so you can see the announcement following the VRS clarification that team's prize pool is considered for ranking points. Starting with PGL Bucharest 2025, the prize pool is the distribution is as follows. Now, before we get into the granularity of that, I'll also just say it seems Valve have done the worst thing they could have possibly done here and made a terrible decision for esports, a terrible decision for the VRS circuit itself, a terrible decision just for the open circuit as a concept, and it shows that they're actually not really committed to that idea, no matter how much they say. Because what you should be doing is you should be saying, no, guys, it's a prize pool. Only the money that goes to players will be considered for VRS ranking points. And that would have made all of ESL's bullshit events where they advertise 1 million, but really the prize pool for players is $300,000. That would mean that their VRS ranking points would be negatively impacted for obvious reasons because of the rules around the circuit. But no, Valve have just said, we're not going to intervene. Do what you want. And that now is essentially just giving ESL all of the fucking cards. I don't know why Valve have done that. It's pretty shameful in my opinion, because I strongly suspect they understand ESL having a monopoly is bad. One of the reasons why they broke up the partnered leagues was because they understand a closed circuit isn't good. And yet here we are, and now we've essentially got just an ESL-dominated circuit where the organizations in cahoots with ESL just get to fuck PGL in the arse, and everyone's just got to say, yep, that's just fine, that's just acceptable. So the 50-50 split won't impact on VRS points, which probably would have been the final deal breaker for PGL in acquiescing and deciding this. But anyway, you can see now what it means is that, if you get a $400,000 prize, actually $200,000 is going to be going to the players, $200,000 straight into the pockets of the organizations. And of course, don't forget, 10% of that, 15% of that, 25% of that $200,000, that's going to go in there as well, because there's no way these contracts have been renegotiated. And again, if they have, I urge the organizations to make that clear to the community, because I think that's something fans of the players might like to know, right? And by the way, all players should have access to that information behind the scenes. Otherwise, how can you make any intelligent decisions about which organization you join? So similarly, you can see here all the way down, even to the somewhat derisory prizes for 15th to 16th place, those teams that go and finish there, they'll still get $6,000 for their troubles, which obviously isn't a lot, but if you are a smaller organization, that's likely to cover, most of the flights, etc. So at the lower end, it's not as egregious, but obviously this is Na'Vi, one of the wealthiest esports orgs in the world, taking 50% of the prize money out of its players' hands. And I just don't see how anyone can make an argument for that being good. It seems for once I'm in the majority because HLTV, they wrote an op-ed, which I'm going to read you some extracts from. Obviously, it's still a relatively recent development. HLTV, back in the day, they used to kind of not really be into opinion pieces. They're editorially speaking, they didn't write a lot of them. Generally, the ones they did do were always stats-based as well, because HLTV for many, many years, I know people don't like to hear this, but it wasn't a good journalistic outlet. It was a rewrite of team roster moves and a rewrite of press releases, but what it was really good for was being an unprecedented stats database for the history of the game. Anyway, the newer version of HLTV with this new crew, Professor, Striker, Node, M&M's, missing a bunch of people like Nero, but all of you guys, right? All of you guys, basically. It's probably the strongest writing core they've ever had, just in terms of people that understand. You got to put some fucking sizzle on that steak. This was called Strike 2. The big orgs won the battle of attrition, but the war is far from over. Tournament organizers' incentive models were only the first battleground of the new era. Now responsibility shifts back onto teams and players. And it sets the table pretty well, talks about the franchise leagues and how we got there. And then it says, the former partner teams are now clutching at straws as the businesses they built around franchises in the past 5 years no longer make sense in this new era. There's not enough money flowing in to keep up with the expenses they had racked up under the old system, such as salaries and additional team staff. And this is the key to it all, guys. These are not functional businesses. These businesses are run by morons. It's hard to believe it. It's hard to believe that the average esports org is little more than a fucking wet dream for a fucking nerd loser. But that's the people at the very top. That basically, they're just like, well, we've got money now, so what we'll do is we'll spend it now, and we'll level up our business now, and there's no way anything could change in the future. By the way, we knew partnered leagues were coming to an end in 2025. I think it was announced about 18 months before it came into effect. You could have downsized. You could have renegotiated salaries. You could have cut players from the roster you couldn't afford. You could have cut staff you didn't need. You could have... By the way, all of these organizations made cuts to staff. They laid off like 10% of their workforce, 15% of the workforce. You saw this announcement all of the time. They still cannot get their spending under control. Do you know why? Because when big esports team owner want player gets salary what he want. And that's it. That's as hard as the negotiations go in the paint. You know, if obviously it's a bad example because it's Falcons, but if Falcons want Nico, they get Nico. And if Nico want big salary, well, by extension, he get big salary. And organizations have been doing this, not to mention, think about all of the players that are benched and still being paid salaries just because of the nature of how the contracts are written. Think about situations like we had, in Complexity, where it was, the JKS situation, where it was better to have JKS on the bench not playing because of the reduction in his, let's say, overpaid salary, than it was to have him in the team and not playing very well on a full salary. There's tons of situations like this in esports. Now, by the way, that's not to be disparaging about anyone at Complexity. I am just using it as an example, but many such cases. And when you realize, like, some of these salaries that have been negotiated are fucking bonkers and don't make any sense whatsoever, suddenly having a player on a bench, you better hope and pray they're getting the 70% reduction in salary once they go inactive, because that clause isn't boilerplate. That's not something in every contract out there. Anyway, they go on, and it says the reason for this is threefold. One is the Complexity general manager and friend of the stream and long-term acquaintance, Graham Messioso Pitt, pointed out when HLTV confirmed last October the rewards these organizations can get their hands on following the rule changes are not even remotely close to the levels from the previous 5 years, because they are being shared with more teams and are smaller. And that obviously, sticker money, once you expand the major, so more people get a share, the share is generally less. By the way, stickers are always trending downwards, the Paris major being an anomaly in that sense, but typically you get diminishing returns. Particularly, how many times can someone want to buy a logo of an organization when the logo will always be the same and there's very little different about it? I've said for years, what Valve really need to do for the major is there has to be something of value that is unique each and every time, each and every major. What could that be? Well, it's a gloves capsule one year. It's, but by the way, they won't do this because their thought process is, gloves are scarce, knives are scarce, scarcity drives value. Yet they publicly say, Valve say, oh, no, these items have no value. We don't create value. They just create the scarcity that creates the value, and then they benefit from every transaction that happens on the Steam marketplace. It's plausible deniability, but it's complete bullshit. What they should be doing is releasing capsules that have something unique in it, a unique skin for a gun that's tailored. Look, I hate to say it, but what Riot Games have done with Valorant in terms of having skins in the game and everyone getting a revenue share, if you were putting that in the capsule along with the logo, along with the player signatures, and Lord knows what else, whatever you wanted to do, hey, maybe give us a compendium that we could put actual player stickers in that updates live with the stats from the tournament, sell that for $20 a pop, put some of that money into the prize pool, all of it, do a TI stuff. No, we can't have any of that apparently in CS, and I don't understand why. It's a license to print money, makes the game more special and spectacular. Put casters' voice lines in there like you do for we can't do that. No, all right, my bad. So anyway, all of which is to say, Graham is correct. There are fewer rewards because of the sticker money and the way that's allocated among other incentives. 2, although prize money is increased overall because it is a crucial component of the Valve ranking, organizations cannot depend on that. The vast majority of prize money earnings have historically gone to the players, and that mostly remains the case today, especially after the last 4 years. So the big orgs share in revenues with the tournament organizers, money that players either don't get their hands on at all or their share is small. And this is what we call, well, fuck you. This is a fuck you reality. If you are too afraid, if your organization doesn't offer value to the point where you can say, look, we need a bigger cut of the prize money, but you can leave if you want when your contract expires, and they're willing to walk away from you because they don't want to pay 25% of the prize money, they only want to pay 10%, then your org sucks. It's as simple as that. If you don't offer value to the players to want to stay because of a paltry like 10-15% of prize money across the year, then you stink. You stink as an org. Also, you should be negotiating. I know what esports negotiations are like, and they are garbage. It is, the org comes in and goes, we'd really like to sign you. And then an agent comes in and goes, well, my client couldn't possibly sign for less than this. Are you sure? Yeah, we're pretty sure. All right, go on then. That's about it. That's your typical esports negotiation in a nutshell. So the orgs, particularly the American orgs, have inflated salaries beyond anything that's fucking sustainable. And then they turn around and go, yeah, this isn't sustainable because of you. It's always been you. It's always been you. I've always compared these organizations when they're fucking complaining, and this is a unreal reference for those who get it, right? But there's a fucking Anthony Hopkins movie called Magic, right? And it's basically, he's a killer, but he thinks he's not a killer. He thinks his ventriloquist doll is coming to life and killing people, and it has a mind of its own. And anyway, at the end, he gets killed, and the ventriloquist doll turns to him and goes, it was you all along. And he was just fucking mental the whole time. So it turns out, guys, it was them all along. They are Anthony Hopkins in Magic. You did this. It's unsustainable because of you. You keep wasting money. You keep putting up salaries. You keep hiring ridiculously large workforces because you want to look cool, and you hire all your mates in the industry. And it's pathetic, guys. You don't treat your fucking business like a business. You treat it like it's a fucking super cool tech startup with a never-ending amount of angel investor money. It isn't that. Next, when sales reached unprecedented highs at the Blast TV Paris Major in 2023, with a payout of more than $4.5 million per team and its players on average, organizations overestimated potential sticker earnings and upped their budgets. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Why did you redeem the cards? I am fucking flabbergasted about this because everyone knew the Paris Major fucking stickers were gonna go gangbusters. Everybody knew that because think about it, it was the last CS:GO Major. It was all we heard about, wasn't it? It's the last CS:GO Major. We're getting a CS2 Major, the last CS:GO Major. And so that the fucking share is going to be bigger than it has been in a long, long time. One of the biggest of all time, if not the biggest. What you are then meant to do is go, wow, what an incredible windfall. I will now be able to pay back some loans, pay off some debt, reinvest this. We could use this to do a merch line and maybe turn our money into more money. We can create something of value with this money and sell it to our, fucking audience. You're not supposed to just go, we got more money, now we spend more money. It's ridiculous. Guys, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's like the buffalo. Fucking, you can't hunt them to extinction, or the dodo. You can't hunt it to extinction, guys, and then go, whoa, there's none left. Yes. You keep using the buzzword sustainable. You keep using the buzzword renewable. None of this is sustainable, guys. Anyway, the PGL Copenhagen and Perfect World Shanghai majors to take place since then experienced a just as unprecedented drop-off from the high, amounting to around $1 million and $500,000 on average, 2 of the 3 lowest payouts at post-pandemic majors, along with IEM Rio. And I'll tell you this, it's a world where you are let down by Valve. You are let down by Valve because I don't think the capsules offer great value for money. I think they have to go back to the drawing board in terms of what you are getting when you make a purchase. Because people will buy shit. We know they'll do that. They'll buy stuff in-game if it gives them something of commensurate value to what they're paying. And you can use FOMO and all these other marketing tactics, limited edition stuff you can only get now, and then still have the sale at the end with the deadline. You can do all of these things. Valve just basically are sticking a logo and a signature into a capsule that you buy, and I've already got this guy's signature, and I've already got this team's logo, so maybe I just don't do it this year. Money's tight, maybe I can't be asked. It's on Valve to go back to the drawing board and make stickers great again, make capsules great again. Right? It's as simple as that. Anyway, they talk about all of the people. I won't rehash it. They talk about all of the people that basically sat out. You can see the difference of Blast Bounty and Cluj-Napoca. They put it side by side. And they obviously point out that was $500,000 prize money. And this was a $1.25 million prize money. But because the orgs get a cut and they're in their little clique, they fucking pretty much boycotted PGL. And I am using the term boycott. I saw some people criticizing my use of that term in the last video. I think it's appropriate. They elected not to go, lied about their reasons publicly in some instances, or just didn't clarify them at all. And they did it based on a business decision. They were boycotting it, right? It explains that a top 4 finish in Cluj would have amounted to $17,500 going to the organization, assuming they had a 20% share in prize money clause. Meanwhile, if their team remains an elite side throughout the year and attends all 6 Blast events, an org like Na'Vi will earn close to $100,000 per Blast event by just making it to the top 6 to 8 each time. That's accounting for the guaranteed appearance fees and the expected value of frequent flyer tokens. Meanwhile, ESL's solution sat between the two thanks to the club share portion of prize money now counting towards the Valve regional standings, which means all of their events are worth at least $1 million. Again, you rescind that, you cut ESL off at the knees. I don't know why Valve just don't do that. Even more so, it made the pressure to keep up with high salaries and other conditions higher than ever when everyone suddenly had money to throw around. No one prepared for the combination of franchises ending and the unsustainable sticker high coming down in one huge crash. A real effort in that shift has only begun in recent times, but it is still a long way away from becoming a reality. The teams need more time before contracts can better reflect the new balance between incentives and the reality that prize money is now the be-all and end-all as far as Valve is concerned. That can't happen overnight, especially when you're talking about players going down on the conditions that they had been used to for years, and when there will always be richer teams constantly fishing for your players and driving up the prices. So, look, ultimately, I don't care about any of those things. I don't care. I think they're excuses. I think if you're an MGO right now and you're saying, but if we don't pay players the big salaries, they'll go to someone else. Fine. Let your business rival pay the bigger salaries and they can figure out how to make that work. Because if it doesn't work for you, chances are it doesn't work for them. Falcons might be an anomaly, but for most of the organizations, they're in the same boat as you, right? If sticker money's gone down for y'all and revenue coming in has gone down for y'all and the fucking franchise leagues are dead, then everyone's in the same boat, and therefore everyone will be roughly negotiating on an even playing field unless they're like Falcons and they're playing with house money. If you want the industry to correct itself, you have to be part of that correction. It goes to make sense that is what would have to happen, and yet they don't. They won't do that. They simply will not do that because they don't want to lose out. And that's the problem with all of this. The organizations think they have a God-given right to pay the salaries they want, have the most competitive teams they want, and someone somewhere has to underwrite them at all times, whether it's the games developer, whether it's a tyrannical regime, whether it's you. You know, they don't make their business fucking make any sense, and then they stand back and they go, why isn't it working? Who's going to bail us out? It's ridiculous. And I anyone who goes along with this, by the way, is a good concept moving forward. I'm talking about the fans, because when my last video hit Reddit, I saw a number of comments going, yeah, this is just what they have to do. They absolutely do not have to do this, and you absolutely do not have to go along with any of this. I mean, this is not good. This is not good for the space. The organizations will tell you different, but it really isn't. You're essentially robbing the players to pay the organizations, and I don't see how that's sustainable moving forward. And I think it's sad PGL have been put in a position where they've had to go along with everybody else. No doubt I'll have a better idea about it once I've worked Bucharest. And on that note, let me just also show you, yeah, turns out, guys, it's all for nothing anyway, because, well, you will never see a PGL event where all of the big organizations that are in cahoots with ESL and Saudi Arabia attend. This is like the next day after PGL announced the revenue share. And then they showed who's going to attend Bucharest in April. Wouldn't you know, G2 are going to be there. Cool. Liquid are going to be there. Fury are going to be there. That's 3 of the organizations that skipped out on Cluj. But you'll also notice, yeah, there's no Na'Vi, there's no Vitality. Meanwhile, they're going to fly to fucking Australia for less prize money. There's no Spirit. I'm pretty certain you will not see a PGL event where all of the top teams attend. All of these orgs have a working relationship with ESL and Saudi Arabia via the Esports World Cup. So what do you, like I said, the quid pro quo is don't make the business rival look really good. And that's not being talked about. And they'll say it's a conspiracy if you say it. Well, explain it to me. You can fly to a Schengen Agreement country in Central Europe, or you can fly to the other fucking side of the world for less money. And you're going to make the players do one and not the other. And also, why does flying to Australia not affect your visa application? But flying to a Schengen country does, apparently. It's complete fucking nonsense. And the thing I hate is, again, because of the way Valve have done the rules, these PGL aren't holding any cards. They can't say, right, because get this, I guarantee 100% Na'Vi and Spirit are going to want to go to Astana in their backyard, essentially, like one of the regions where they have huge fan bases. Pretty sure they'll want to go and attend that event, right? Well, PGL can't turn around and go, stick it up your ass. They have to invite them. They have to give them the option. And that just seems ridiculous, that ultimately these MGOs get the piss in PGL's face, do things like this, where it's very clear what's going on, and then PGL have to turn around and invite them again and again and again. And the only way they could not do that would be to lose their VRS status, in which case teams would likely decline on principle. So don't think for a second that just because PGL have given them what they wanted with the prize pool split, these orgs aren't still going to fuck them. Because, of course, they're still going to fuck them, because they're not ESL. They're not part of the Saudi paradigm. They operate outside of that, and because they're outside of that, they have to go. That's the long-term goal of all of this. That's why I say these people do not care about the ecosystem of Counter-Strike or esports beyond it. Because if PGL were essentially to go out of business because they can't get the sponsors or, whatever it might be in the future, I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's very unlikely it would. But let's say it did happen. Let's say all of their sponsors were like, well, you're not getting the big teams and the viewership's down, even though the viewership for Cluj was the largest viewership that PGL had. That was a non-major event. So, you couldn't even fuck them over properly, by the way, orgs. They still got, a lot out of it. But let's just say that happens. And then let's say when Saudi eventually pull out in 3 years and they go, yeah, we're done with esports. It wasn't great for us, right? They're going to turn around and go, oh, yeah, can we come and do your events now? And PGL are going to go, sorry, we don't have a business model because you fucked us. And they genuinely will expect that door to just be flung wide open again. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy what these organizations are doing. And I'm very much like, yeah, fuck these guys. Like, what they're doing for the industry is, so fucking cancerous. It's beyond a joke.